Let's talk about The Blade itself by Joe Abercrombie. This is a book from 2006. It's fantasy. It's the first book in the First Law trilogy, the first of 9 novels so far. Possibly that will be all in the First Law universe. This was a review request from my 100 subscribers Q&A. So this is, I guess, touted as grimdark fantasy. Joe Abercrombie is referred to as Lord Grimdark. It's certainly in the gritty post Song of Ice and Fire subgenre of fantasy. Really interesting that you have this coming out pretty much the same time as Lies of Lochlamora, which is in the kind of same bag on the one hand, and Elantris, which is very much in a different bag. And Brandon Sanderson has spoken about that, actually, the idea of, being told to copy Martin's style and going his own route. But there is a niche there for the market of people who liked a grittier style. So the plot, such as it is well, look, here's the thing. There's not really much of a plot. I'll get to the plot, but there's not really much of a plot. The world building is there, but it's not the focus. This isn't a world building book. This is a character book. This is a book all about characters. Its strength or weakness is going to be its characters. The plot, such as it is something like this. In the north, the northern kingdoms of kind of mock Scandinavia and Scotland have been united by someone called Bethard, and Bethard is he wants to go to war against the Empire, the imperial equivalent, the Union. In the Union, there is a couple of things going on. There's a dueling contest, and if you win the dueling contest, you often win social influence, and there's also some corruption that is endemic and needs to be investigated. And then, sort of in the background, in this book, at least, it's going to be more important, I think, in the second book, is there is a situation developing in is it the west or the southwest or something of the empire, to do with the kingdoms over there, and there's a lot more, if you like, meta plot in that direction, which isn't really the focus of this book. Not much of those things happen in this book. These things brew and simmer. The world building, I guess it's worth talking about as well. I should say the plot does involve development and purpose and progress. Things happen, but to kind of sum up what I mean by not much happens, 400 pages of it, those things I've said, they're just there. These things are in the background. There's some tick progress. The last 80 to 100 pages, lots happens, and that's a lot more interesting at the plot level. Anyway, the world building, well, it's a fantasy Europe / world with an imperial power, which isn't as obviously Britain as lots of imperial powers are. It's a central island, which, in fact, we know that Angland and the north they're much more like England and Scotland and stuff. But there's this the Union is kind of interesting. We get a bit of its mythology and background. We get plenty of stuff about its politics and some of its higher up social organisation. You hear a bit about some other places. Most of that is not particularly deep. It is not where Abercrombie's heart is. It's good as far as it goes, but it's shallow. The stuff about magic is probably more interesting in terms of world building. Magic is in the world. There are wizards in the world, but magic is leaking out of the world. It's going back to the realm of demons from whence it was stolen, captured, siphoned, whatever. I don't think it's really said here, and so I don't know. But that's the kind of thing that's happening, is that it is magical world, but the magic is leaking out of the world, and there is therefore an increasing griminess and grittiness. You are meant to see, not necessarily decline, but some sort of descent, at least perhaps, or shift to a lower register. So I like the world building, not very much there though. This is a character book, and it is how should we put it? It's a character book on steroids. We follow 3 main points of view. There are another 3 minor points of view. The 3 main characters and main points of view, and they are on the back of the book, so it's profoundly non-spoilery to mention them, are Logan Ninefingers. He's a northern warrior who used to fight for Bethard and now doesn't. There's Gloctadan Sand. He's a torturer for the Union who's investigating corruption. And there is Jezeldan Luther, who is he's a Union soldier who wants to win the dueling championship, and that's what he's kind of practicing for, because he wants to be successful and use that as a springboard to greater things. And very early on, Abercrombie renders these characters realistic and engaging, but also sympathetic. So Logan is the most obviously sympathetic. That's easy. Lots of people, on the other hand, find Jezzel very annoying, but I think all these characters are sympathetic with realistic psychologies, realistic stakes, and the action here is much more about the private stakes and experiences of the point of view characters rather than the bigger events in the world. The bigger events of the world affect them seriously, because obviously big events do affect people seriously, but much as for most of us, our experience of bigger events is that they impinge upon the private stakes of our lives. It's the same here. Abercrombie is, Lord Grimdark, he's not misanthropic. He doesn't hate the people he writes about. He's not excited about punishing them. He just works to realise his characters on page, and if anything, he likes them. It comes across that he likes them. These characters make bad choices. They wreck things around them because of their bad choices, or they have in the past, or they seem to be about to. But they are ultimately us. Abercrombie has a sympathetic, humane view in this book, and he communicates that to us, the reader, I think. Logan is a bloody-handed man who feels dissociated and uncomfortable with his past. Glocta is a bitter and hurt man who starts the book hurting others because it gives him a sense of rather nihilistic meaning, the sort of Nietzschean existentialist meaning of power and control. Jezzel is an egotistic prig, but he also has an emotional life and a code which doesn't easily, if we're looking for a one-note character, doesn't easily reconcile with egotistic prig. The other characters are great as well, who don't necessarily have points of view, or they're less important. There's a guy called Yulway. He might be my favourite of the non-main POVs. I liked Forley and Three Trees and Dogman as well. There was one character moment, I should say, on the note of the character work, there was one character moment which was a big thing, and it's a dramatic turn that's meant to really, I think, move a character on. That didn't land for me, that felt forced and over-dramatic. But that was one of dozens of important character moments, dozens of character scenes. Abercrombie is very good. Look at scenes versus moments. That's a really good principle in, I think, screenwriting, amongst other places. But the idea that you build up characters and you earn the big moments by giving them scenes where the character dwells and the character inhabits a situation, and you kind of see them interacting with the world at a normal pace, and the moment is the dramatic thing, which is the crescendo from there. Brandon Sanderson's very good at that, but Abercrombie is very good at that too. I found it interesting, this is kind of connected, that violence was generally lampshaded in favour of emotional response and general gesture. And I mean, there is a torturer in this book. That's the relevant point, that this is a book which you think could be pretty unpleasant, and I'm sure there may be other examples in other books which are unpleasant. But in this book, the sort of, are things too disgusting or intensely described? I didn't really find that. It's less explicit about torture, despite having a torturer, than Lies of Locke Lamora is, for instance. Abercrombie is a British fantasy action writer. His style is reminiscent of other writers like that, and he's reputed to be a bit grimdark, but I found this basically to be fairly easygoing, not rough to read. Some issues around kind of pacing and plot and stuff aside. But on the whole, I didn't come away thinking, man, that was the darkest thing I've read all year. It's definitely a book with mature themes, mature moments. It's not going to be something you say to your 8-year-old, this could be your next novel. But it is nonetheless, I think, easy enough and gentle enough. I don't think you need to be terrified of this book if that was your level of concern. I liked it a lot. It's very much one kind of book. It's not going to suit all people. If you're a strong action person, this book isn't going to provide it on the whole. It has some great action scenes, but it's not an action book. If you are a world-building guy or gal, then this is not going to do that. So it doesn't do everything. It's not therefore going to be for everyone, but what it does in its lane is exceptional, and if you like the sound of it, I recommend it. Tell me what you thought about it in the comments, and if you've read other books in a non-spoiler fashion, tell me whether you think they match up and whether they develop and how they differ from this first book. Till next time.